All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. My name is Richard Lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. Today, I have Mike Brevik with me. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. My pleasure. So, please, Mike, tell a little bit about yourself, and we'll get started.
Well, I've been in and around the marketing industry for almost 30 years. I own a company called CyberDogs. I have a podcast called Brand Retro, where we talk about kind of all things branding, marketing, entrepreneurship, things like that. I'm married and I have two little girls. So live in Minnesota also.
All right. So, I'm going to jump in right into it. How do you build a powerful brand?
I think it starts with belief, like when you're building your company, building your brand, you need to build a brand that resonates with you and it's something that you can easily be authentic towards. And I think it starts with that belief and kind of that formula of making sure that you're on the right track with something that you can get behind and confidently, promote with little to no effort. And then when it comes to the tactical side of things, whether it be a logo, website, the core values, all those kinds of things that kind of make that up, it's once you start with that belief, it's almost easier to construct those things and to visualize where you want that brand to go. And then once you have, those pieces in place, it's consistency, it's authenticity, it's repetition, it's that cadence. People can kind of see through brands that they don't necessarily resonate with, or brands that don't have that belief in them. And when you're building your own brand and building your own company and you're out there promoting it, selling it, kind of doing your thing, I think it's very easy to see whether or not you're passionate about it, whether or not you have belief in what you're doing, and whether or not, that brand is truly authentic.
What do you think would be the common thing that the big brands have?
I think there's a kind of a commitment to what they are. Like if you look through, like if you just Google like Nike ads or Coca-Cola, or you might see shifts and you might see evolution and you might see kind of how things have changed over the years, but what you will see is just a thread of consistency. So you can see where they've really locked in and dialed in on these are the pieces that matter to us. And over time, even if it's decades, they never really lose sight of those things, even if they evolve it in a certain way to stay with the times, or maybe they were on a track that wasn't quite working and they put it back to center. And I think that's the big thing is it's consistency. And even, I mean, for the social media people out there, consistency is everything.
What would you say is the difference between personal branding and corporate branding?
There's a lot of overlap and a lot of things that I would say to apply to both. The personal branding, which is nice, is it really connects back to the individual. It really connects back to who you are as a brand and as a person. But you do have to stay that much more in tune with kind of the underlining reasons why it is what it is. Because if it connects directly and personally to you, it's something that's going to be easily kind of called out if it's not in step with each other. So it's important that, especially in a personal brand, that you're almost extra transparent with who you are and what you can represent within that brand. Now, on a professional brand side, you can definitely put a lot of those personal elements within a professional brand, like a CyberDogs or a Nike or whatever. But I think you also have to think a little bit bigger. You have to think about the clients in which you want to attract. You have to think about the team members in which you would kind of pull into that brand. Um, they're very similar, but one's just a little bit broader scope, if that makes sense.
What would you say would be the mistakes that people make when it comes to branding?
I talk about this often, and I think one of the big mistakes people make is in the effort or the drive to be successful, they just try to do what everybody else does. I call it the monkey see, monkey do kind of approach where they just look at what other people are doing and they think, well, if they're successful and if I just do what they do, it should work for me, right? And the truth is yeah, there might be elements of, there might be a sprinkle of, tactical that works in there that you could definitely mimic, but just because it works for one company, one person, one brand doesn't necessarily mean that it works for you. And to truly be connected to and authentic with your brand, that's also your differentiator as to why you will eventually compete and hopefully win over that customer, or against that competition, if that makes sense. Um, so I mean, I definitely think it's important to study other brands and to look at your competition, but um, that's one of the biggest mistakes to me is they blindly just try to do what somebody else does. And you have to include yourself in this process and you have to factor in your own skills, your own weaknesses, all that stuff.
You've worked with brands before. What was it like, and what did you notice like in that environment?
With the really big brands, the biggest thing that I noticed is they have the same problems as everybody else. Whether it's Nike, Under Armour, Browning Guns, like they're all trying to solve the same problem. They're all trying to grow their audience. They're all trying to connect with consumers. They're trying to make sales. They're trying to develop the next campaign that hopefully, I don't want to say goes viral, but at least goes a little bit more intensely than the one previous. And their scope's bigger, obviously. Their budgets are bigger. They have more resources. I mean, so they have more kind of tools in their toolbox, so to speak. But for whatever reason, with those bigger brands, before I had worked with them, I just thought they had it all figured out. I expected Nike to have all the answers, and I expected these teams at these big brands and big companies to just be so well oiled that, they didn't have the same struggles as the rest of us. And that's just not true. Their scope is different. Their audiences are a little different, but it was just surprising to me that they just have the same, and it makes sense obviously now, but at the time I was like, man, these guys put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. Like it was just kind of, you just weren't ready for that. You just thought all these brands had the answers.
You were talking about before, like the customer.
Yep.
What would you say like would be the relationship with brands? How brands can have great relationships with their customers?
I think, to put it in kind of the business buckets, it's customer service, it's, they're all those different things, whether it's before the purchase, during the purchase, after the purchase. I think it's maintaining a consistent tone within their marketing messaging that, basically so that it resonates with their audience. Like all those kind of surface level things, I think are very they're kind of like dumb type answers, but those are the things I think everybody should have. And then above and beyond that, to your question, I think to truly connect with consumers and to truly stand out, I think you just have to do extra things. I think you have to maybe say thank you sometimes when, like when it doesn't fit. Like you have to maybe, slip a card, a sticker, a handwritten note or something in the package when it goes out the door. I think a personal phone call sometimes from a brand or from, somebody is it stands out. And I think those little things that you can put in there, it doesn't have to be all the time, but once in a while, if it fits with your brand and it's consistent with your message, if you can put those little personal touches in there and those little extra things, I think that goes a long way with consumers and they remember that.
How important it is for storytelling?
I think storytelling is really important again, but it's the consistency that matters, to me almost more than that, because over time, that's when you're gonna that's when that story is gonna sink in. That's when that's gonna seep into people's minds and they're gonna understand kind of, who you are and what you're about. I think A lot of times, brands, companies, entrepreneurs, I think they feel like if they don't have this tragic story, or if they don't have this, like I don't have this real grinding story to kind of build my brand from, they feel like it's not worth it. And it's not really about that. Like, not every brand, every entrepreneur, every business needs to come from this place of duress either. It can just be a place of observation. It could be, that you were in the industry so many years, you made this observation and you wanted to do X, Y, and Z different. And I think to build that story out and to tell people your why, I think that's really important, because if they obviously if they like that, if they resonate with that, or if they just respect the situation, they're going to inherently and almost subliminally become potentially brand lovers.
You built your company. From your standpoint, how would you, do you think you have a strong brand at the moment?
Um, I think I'm definitely on the right track. When I started my brand, one of the most important things to me was I just never wanted it to be just an agency, just a marketing company, just like it. I always wanted it to be a brand that services these areas, because I wanted to be able to pivot on that at any point, so that if my business went a certain direction, or even if I wanted to, spin it into, apparel, or maybe it was going to just be a house of brands. I just wanted the kind of the tip of that umbrella to be strong enough to stand by itself. So since day one, like, I've been just kind of uber diligent in not only showcasing, wearing my own brand, very consistent with my own color palette. I've been very consistent with telling my story. Like, I'm trying to do all the things that I think are, kind of monumental, or paramount in getting that brand out there, and to do it in a way that it just builds momentum and traction and kind of steam over time. And why I would say I'm on the right track is because A, I've done all those things, but B, like, I get a lot of people who know my brand and some who don't know my brand that will make comments about it. They'll either talk to me kind of out of the blue about my logo, or they'll talk to me out of the blue about the color orange. Like, every time I see the color orange, I think of you. And it's like, I think those little things that over time kind of seep into people's subconscious. So I definitely think we're on the right track. And then along with all that, um, we have a certain way of doing business, and we have certain expectations, and a way of kind of treating our customers that might not feel like it's this cornerstone within the brand, but it very much is, because I want people to, experience CyberDogs as a next level experience, a next level company, and all of a sudden, the creativity and the deliverables and all these different things are second to none. And if I can, consistently do that over time, along with all the visuals and the colors and the logos and all these things add up to big things.
Uh, how, when you go shopping or you're buying shoes or, anything like a sports gear, what would you say is the thing that makes people want to buy a Nike or an Apple? Like, what do you think is the motive, like the ticking point?
It, I mean, I think it's almost 100% branding. Like, I'm not saying they don't make nice products. I mean, I'm a huge Nike guy. I love their products. I think the quality is really good. But pound for pound, if in a is it that much different, better, or otherwise than an Adidas or a Under Armour or anything else? I think an argument or a debate could be made on either side as to why one is better than the other. And that's not to take away from any of them. But I think the difference is whether you're an Adidas guy or a Nike guy or whatever. I think it's your, just kind of your connection to that brand, why it is you love them. Is it, I'm a huge Michael Jordan guy, which obviously sucked me into, the Nike side of things. I think, and it's not wrong, but it's brands are very clever about how they position themselves and how they put themselves in certain kind of buckets that resonate with people. And I think, whether it's the celebrity endorsements or the way they just position their brands in advertising, whether it's the packaging. I mean, look at Apple, and not that Apple isn't great product, but when you go into an Apple store or you buy an Apple product, there's nobody that has that packaging and just that overall tight appearance fit. Like it's an experience every time. And I think those little things and those little differentiators are huge. And again, those little things add up to be big things over time. And I even think about, smaller brands, like a lot of these boutique brands that are out there that, you buy a product and it comes so well done, whether it's in a poly bag or a box and there's a handwritten card in there. Like I think there's a lot of those little lack of a better word, those little gimmicky things that they do that subliminally again just suck you in. And I think on a bigger scale, you take a Nike or an Apple or any big brand, they're doing all of that and more, especially with like their, celebrity or brand endorsements or their athlete endorsements.
When it comes to innovation, how often do you think brands like companies or even if you're building a personal brand should innovate?
I think it's a never ending thing. I don't think innovation is something you put on the calendar to do. I mean, it's just happening at all times. I think, I would even say with like you'd mentioned Nike and some of these big brands, they're what we're seeing from Nike was something that they innovated probably 2 years ago. Like they're so far ahead of the curve that by the time it hits us, like they're on to their next big thing. And I think as an entrepreneur and as an agency, I think you always have to keep your head on a swivel, whether it's software, people, um, the way the industry is evolving. I think those things are just you should be innovating at all times. I personally, I'll just tell you that I go into every year with kind of forced innovation where we're going to have two, three, four things that we're going to do this year, and here's what they are. And maybe the spark of innovation for that happened last year, but these are the big initiatives that we have. And then outside of that, I mean, we just roll with the punches and things come up and you just deal with it. The most common thing that comes to mind right now is, whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 months ago when AI kind of hit the scene and everybody was freaking out. Like you had no choice but to get on board or get behind. And, were we ready for that? Not really, but you deal with it, you figure it out, and you find ways to leverage it. You find ways to keep up.
What if you're too far ahead with your product and your innovation? What do you do then?
I think it's one of those things where, to me anyway, innovation kind of the way we do it, it kind of paces itself with the business because with innovation, you have to obviously there's cost, there's resources, there's you gotta you don't necessarily want to give birth to this next big thing and then not have the means or the resources to take care of it or to promote it the way you want to. So to me, it kind of fixes its own problem. But let's just say you innovate something that's way ahead of the curve and you're trying to figure out now what do I do with it. I think that's why partnerships are important. I think being able to have people in your industry and within your network that you can bounce ideas off or even um, find other resources from, I think is super important. I'm in a couple, two, three different mastermind groups, and one of the biggest things, I mean, I get a lot of value from them, but one of the biggest values I get from them is being able to hop in a Zoom room or have a conversation with a bunch of people that are either at my level or above, and being able to just bounce ideas off them, to ask them questions, to even hit them up with, hey, do you know anybody that X, Y, and Z? And then, they'll hopefully connect me with somebody. Um, I think you just plan for that at all times. Like I don't necessarily know when I'm going to need those resources or need those opportunities, but if you're pushing forward and if you're evolving and trying to grow business, it'll come to roost eventually.
Hmm. What do you think are the challenges that brands will face in the future, if there's any?
I think that the challenge is always to stay relevant. And I think right now, the biggest issue with brands right now, I wouldn't say issue, but the challenge for them is just kind of the social climate, like getting hammered for not saying things right or not saying it the right way or having alignments with the wrong people or the wrong brands who, oh, by the way, you didn't know that they did what they did, or like there's just a lot of scrutiny out there. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be held accountable or they shouldn't, be aware of these things, but it's just everybody needs to just relax a little bit because some of these brands, like, they're not in the social political game. They're in business to sell shoes or they're in business to sell books or whatever it is. And I think when the internet gets a hold of somebody and decides, hey, we're going to tear this person down, it's tough to kind of wade through that. And big brands typically can sustain that stuff, but not without losing probably millions of dollars in the process. Now, again, I think they should be socially accountable and aware, and like they need to do good, try the best you can to do good in the world, and you'll probably escape 90% of that, but I think it's tough sometimes too when people are looking to tear you down. And I think that's a challenge for brands because even now, like obviously today with the internet, social media, all those things, you go back 20, 30 years ago, they didn't have to worry about that stuff. So if you were to go back 30 years and say, hey, why weren't you thinking about these things? How would they have known? How would they have ever been able to anticipate where we are today? And I think that's something that big brands and even, smaller entrepreneurs brands, like that's why the authenticity piece and kind of what you put into your brand, it all needs to be stuff that you can live with, speak to, and not necessarily, feel like you have to defend at some point. It's just easier. It's a much more transparent way forward. And again, big brands is much different, but at the end of the day, I think that's the challenge for them is just knowing that everybody's watching them.
Any stuff that you're working right now at the moment?
This year has just gone by so fast. We are working on a lot of regular stuff, but we're also doing some cool things. We're doing a co-branded motorcycle with Janus Motorcycles. It's going to be a Cyberdogs themed bike. So I'm excited to get that launched and to be able to put that out on social media. Personally, I am going through a what I call a brand calibration, where basically we're taking our Cyberdogs brand and we're kind of calibrating and massaging it down to kind of adhere to different buckets so that we can kind of relaunch our social media campaigns and kind of do some big things in the second half of the year. And yeah, I guess outside of that, we're, just trying to kind of shore up our processes and make sure that we're putting out a better customer experience.
Where can people find you on the social media or the internet?
Yeah, you can find us at cyberdogsmarketing.com, and that's Cyberdogz marketing.com. And then all our social links are on there. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, the whole works. Or I should say X, but
All right. Thanks, Mike, for being here. It was nice meeting you and talking to you. On that note, everybody, thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.